Welcome to the place of rest, where our aim is to give you language that helps you displace the growing confusion, chaos, and dis-ease of our times. My name is Jonathan Boyce, and it's my pleasure to bring to you today's episode. Virginia continues a conversation with Dr. Judy Ho to discuss her first book, Stop Self-Sabotage. Dr. Judy shares her own pilgrimage and how it formed her deepest convictions, which compel her work today. We hope you enjoy today's conversation.
Dr. Judy, I'm so happy you could join me for another brief segment on your new book.
Oh, thank you so much. Yeah, Stop Self-Sabotage has actually been around since 2019. It's actually my first major book.
Okay.
The New Rules of Attachment is my newest book. But yeah, so very exciting. I really enjoyed the process of writing Stop Self-Sabotage and seeing the impact it's had on people.
Tell us about it. What prompted you to write it? And what impact have you seen it have on people?
Yeah, so Stop Self-Sabotage for me was so important because I see self-sabotage everywhere. I see it affecting everyone. And I think that it's truly something that's based in our evolutionary and survival instincts. And so it's really just something that got a little extreme and got turned on its head. But actually, it comes from an adaptive place. And so I wanted people just to be demystified about what self-sabotage really is, and also to forgive themselves if they find themselves self-sabotaging, because I think all of us do it from time to time. It's more just about how much it affects us and if it's making a negative impact, and do you want to change that?
How do people self-sabotage?
I think that some of the most common ways I see people self-sabotage is in their relationships, being hot and cold in their relationships, throwing in the towel too fast, testing their partners. I also see it in work through procrastination, because you think that maybe by waiting until the last minute, you're going to be inspired, but actually you just don't have enough time to carry out your great ideas. I also see it when people give up on a goal just because they come across one barrier and they say, well, that's it. They have black and white thinking and they throw everything out. But by doing that, they never get to have the experience of them achieving that goal. And so then their self-esteem starts to get lower and lower and lower as a result, which makes it, of course, much harder to set goals and achieve them in the future.
Why do people procrastinate? Let's take that one.
Yeah, people procrastinate for a couple of different reasons. One is they have decision paralysis. They know how important this project is. And so then they don't get started because they're thinking a lot in their mind about all the steps, but they're not doing them. And they're getting overwhelmed in their minds. Like, well, if I do this and I can't do this other thing, so what does that mean? And then before you know it, they ran out of time. But I also think that there's another type of self-sabotage that happens when people are focused on potentially this feeling of a creative process, this motivation they're waiting for when things are last minute, and that all of a sudden they're going to do their best work. And while you may get a creative surge of energy towards the end and closer to a project's due date, which I think some of us are like that, because it's sort of like the pressure makes us all of a sudden snap into clarity in our thinking. Unfortunately, when you wait till the last minute, you can't actually execute this amazing plan that you just came up with. And so those are the two most common ways and reasons I see people self-sabotaging through procrastination.
What prompted you to write that book?
I think that the biggest reason why I decided to write a book about it is because I saw people using the word self-sabotage, and then they just kind of throw their hands up in the air like, well, I guess I did that again. And then they don't really actually apply any solutions. And maybe they don't even think that they can. So I wanted to show people that there's an evidence way to go about eradicating self-sabotage from your life.
You wrote it in 2019. Do you sense that already you're thinking about a rewrite for that book, given your work on attachment?
No, I don't really think I need to rewrite that book. I think that really the attachment book is the follow-up to it, because after doing the work from self-sabotage, I had people come and ask me, well, what's the next step? I've done the work on Stop Self-Sabotage. What's the next level? And to me, the next level is attachment, because it all goes back to attachment. And I think self-sabotage often happens because of unhealed attachment wounds.
That's really interesting. You'd think you wrote the book on attachment first and then on sabotage, but you did it the other way around.
Yep. Yeah, exactly.
Was it because you saw the need? That was the urgent need, or that it just became like vernacular, just these cliche lines people use and you were annoyed by it?
Yeah, I feel like it was because, to a couple of things. One is I saw the need for even a deeper level of work for people who were seeking it. Like self-sabotage is one of the major ways that unhealed attachment can show up, but it can show up in other ways as well. So I wanted to cover the whole spectrum of ways that people tend to manifest negative outcomes in their lives. And I think attachment is really the answer. But secondly, yeah, Virginia, I was annoyed at how online media and social media was covering attachment. It was like, okay, like I'm having a bad relationship with my husband or partner, and that's about attachment. I'm like, well, that's true, but how come no one's talking about, or very few people are talking about how attachment affects your career, your work, your self-concept, your relationships with other people? And so I did get a little annoyed, and I also got annoyed of all of the misconceptions about disorganized attachment. Like everybody thinks that it's just a combination of anxious and avoidant, and that, okay, people with disorganized attachment are really problematic and they can't be helped. And, they have borderline personality disorder. I mean, just saw so much misconceptions out there about attachment, which is why I really wanted to write the new rules of attachment to make it clear that there's some other things we should be paying attention to.
I am so thankful. The whole interview was worth hearing you say that. There is so much misinformation, and it is so destructive on so many levels. And there's so much resignation over things that can relatively easily be turned around relatively quickly.
Right.
And I'm glad that you were able to really explain that like you did.
Thank you so much.
I hope people find a lot of hope in what you just said.
I hope so too.
Because I think there are a lot of people like us out there becoming intolerant of this narrative of mental illness being the end all and your condition, your state for the rest of your life, which becomes another form of sabotage. It's almost like the current has become violent in these social media platforms. And it's sabotaging people. People sabotage themselves, and then the culture's sabotaging, right? It's artificial.
Right, exactly.
What did you discover in writing that book that surprised you? How did it change you?
Yeah, I think as I was writing the book, I noticed that a lot of times, again, and it makes sense, people are really focused on sabotage in their romantic relationships, but they don't see how much they're sabotaging their progress at work, in their careers, even in the goals that they set. They just don't set huge goals for themselves because they don't really believe they're going to achieve them anyway. So why even put that in front of them? So it really affects the way that people envision their lives unfolding. And to avoid disappointment, they sometimes don't set big goals at all. And that's what I really wanted to challenge people to think, is that sometimes self-sabotage is inaction. It's not just doing something and then saying, oh man, why did I do that? It's about just not doing anything in the first place. And that's a form of self-sabotage. People limit themselves because of these beliefs that they have.
We have so many people that want to gift healing to their friends and family members. Due to popular request, we've officially created the Gift of Rest package for purchase. Please go to theplaceofrest.com/wholeness packages to view the Gift of Rest. If you've been listening to our podcast regularly and are now wondering, what's next, or how can I get more support? Our Day of Rest course is available to support you in your pilgrimage. Use the promo code PODCAST, all lowercase, to receive a 10% discount for our introductory Day of Rest course. Now back to the show.
Does the book give practical tools to defeat those thoughts, those behaviors?
Yes. So my book has a 6-step process on how to eradicate self-sabotage. And the first step is to learn which form of self-sabotage you're most likely to take and where it comes from. So I made an acronym, and the acronym is LIFE. So L is low or shaky self-esteem. I is internalized beliefs from childhood. F is fear of change or fear of the unknown. And E is excessive need for control. So for different people, self-sabotage can come from different sources. It could be one aspect of life. It could be all of life. But once you understand where it comes from, then we dig into the thought patterns that drive your self-sabotage. And then throughout the next few steps, we talk about ways to rework those thoughts, how to change your behaviors, and how to live a values-based life that will prevent you from self-sabotaging all the time.
Fantastic. In closing, this has been a fascinating power talk on self-sabotage, but before we close, I'm curious, what caused you to get into this line of work? Tell us a little bit about your story.
Yeah, for me, becoming a psychologist was something that I actually thought of even when I was in high school. And during that time, when I was about 15 years old, I might have been a sophomore at the time, I was getting into volunteer work. At the time, of course, it sounded fun, but also it was to prep for my college applications. It's like, okay, I want to make sure I have some things on my resume that will impress my college application reviewers. Right. And so I got into the Big Brother, Big Sister Club, and it really changed my life. I was assigned a little girl. Her first name was Marian, and she was just the sweetest little 10-year-old. Unfortunately, she had been in and out of group homes ever since she was a toddler. And so I think she had been at 15 or 16 homes by the time that I met her, and she was only 10. It was so weird because as a 15-year-old, I know nothing about psychology. We didn't even have a psychology class at my high school, so it wasn't like I had any foundational knowledge in any sense of the word. But just by showing up every week and taking her to ice cream and going to the library or going to the movie or just hanging out at a park, I became the most consistent person in her life over the next 2 years that I worked with her. And I just realized how much that relationship was positive for her, even though I didn't know what I was doing and all I did was just show up once a week, that it really became something that was very important to her, because even throughout the time we worked together, she was then in like another 5 or 6 different homes. And so I became one of the most consistent people in her life, and I saw the positive impact it had on her self-esteem and the way she related to people. And that's really what inspired me to be a psychologist. And so I've actually wanted to be a psychologist since I was 15 years old. And thankfully, I've been able to realize that dream for myself. And so that's how I got into this line of work. And up until a few years ago, I was still keeping in touch with Marian. We had written letters to each other and kept in touch that way. And she's doing really well, and I'm so proud of her.
I bet she's read your books.
Maybe, yeah.
That's what a great story. I'll tell you,
thank you.
Never underestimate what happens in these early developmental years of our life and the things that inform our convictions, right?
Yeah,
that's exactly amazing. Such a tender, beautiful time in life. So many things speak to that quiet, still voice of our own humanity, right? Our own sense of meaning and purpose. It's funny, you said there wasn't a psychology class. Well, psychology is just a study of the soul, right? And everybody has one. So that's right. Intuitively, it's a beautiful thing to see how sensitive you were and how really it was your gifting. You were just not just sensitive to it, but you were just predisposed, designed almost to do what you're doing.
Thank you. Yeah, I do feel like it has been a big part of, my own development too, and learning about just what binds us all together, our common humanity. That's what I love about my work.
Wonderful. So inspiring. In closing, I'm curious about your own heritage, your own background, your own family.
Yeah, my family, we are all immigrants. My parents grew up in Taiwan, and I moved here when I was 9. So I think it was really imperative for me seeing the sacrifices that my parents made to try to do something really meaningful with my time here. And I know for sure that if we hadn't moved to America, we would not have the opportunities that I've been given. So I don't really take any of that for granted. It's something that I hope to instill in my own son as he grows older. He is a toddler right now, but I'm already thinking about, I really hope he doesn't underestimate and forget like that part of our heritage and how hard it was for my parents to uproot their entire lives and come to America with $200 in their pocket and try to make it work with a family of 4. So it's an important thing that I try to remember. And, you know, despite anything that we've been through as a family, that's one of the things that I'm the most appreciative of my parents for.
I thought so. I'm a daughter of an immigrant too. And there's a sensitivity and a wisdom and a compassion and a conviction that resonates in how you show up and how you communicate. And I just had to ask you that before we closed, because I can see there's a big story behind your story and behind your work. And I too am the daughter of an immigrant, and we share similar convictions about similar things. And I think that's the beauty in the ashes, right? Of our own stories and the sacrifice of our parents. And I think it's a great note to close on, because there's a lot of people listening to us right now thinking, wow, I wish I could do that. I wish I could do something meaningful. I wish I had clarity on the direction I'm supposed to take. And I think that conviction, that passion, that courage, that strength is often found in a heap of ashes of sacrifice from those that come before us. And so much of our best work comes out of the sacrifice and, I don't know, the pain point of those that came before us.
Yeah.
When we get together and chat, we're going to have an amazing conversation. There's so much I wish we had time to talk about, but this was more than I expected. So thank you so very much.
Oh, thank you, Virginia. Appreciate you.
I appreciate you too. And I love the work you're doing. Keep up the good work.
Thank you so much. You too.
We hope listening to this episode has brought you closer to experiencing the freedom of wholeness and healing. If you have questions or comments about today's episode, or for updates about R.E.S.T, please visit our Instagram or Facebook at The Place of R.E.S.T. If you would like more information about Virginia, or to support and join the cause of R.E.S.T, please go to theplaceofrest.com/donate or call 949-289-5935. Thank you for listening to R.E.S.T with Virginia Dixon. We'll see you next week.